Why do brands collaborate with each other? What differentiates a good collaboration from a bad one? Have we reached collaboration fatigue? And what's next for collaborations? Today, we reveal how to elevate collaborations from tactics to strategies. We put collaborations in context of IP, world building, fandoms, and brands' cultural expansion and market growth. Welcome to Season 2 of Hitmakers, the show that tracks how culture moves margin, multiples, and market cap. Hi, Lee.
Hey, Anna. How are you doing?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Good. Are you traveling at all this week?
Not this week. How about yourself?
I was. And then with all the TSA stuff, I immediately can't.
Did you get caught up?
I not yet. I mean, I canceled everything because I just didn't want to spend 7 hours at the airport, 3 hours in line and everything. So most of my week's been trying to reschedule a bunch of stuff and travel.
That's smart. I was flying from Miami earlier on Saturday, and they told us, oh, it's going to be 2 hours. We're ready to board, the line, all of it. And they're going to be like, oh, it's going to be like 2 hours. It can be longer. It can be shorter. 20 minutes later, we were on a plane. They were like, we found another route. Because they were like, oh, at LaGuardia, they don't have anyone to kind of track your plane. But it was like, fine. So we were only like an hour there.
And that doesn't freak you out that there's no one tracking your plane at LaGuardia?
But they found some because they found the alternative route. So, that's what I'm telling you. Of course, it's very, they wouldn't let.
Well, I see all these
It's
Instagrams of people who are like, it's 3 hours in line to get through security, 3 hours to board the plane, and then 3 hours sitting on the tarmac before you take off. Like there was this one guy who was saying there was like 30, the pilot came on and said there were 30 planes ahead of them before they took off. So it's like, even if you got off quickly, I don't even want to like risk the chance that I'm in one of those 9 hour at the airport
You know
trips.
what? I guess like we were extremely lucky because then we took, and like we landed LaGuardia. I don't know, like I don't want to bore, but there was no one. Like literally LaGuardia was empty. It was Saturday night at decent time. I don't know, it was like 9:30. No one. I never got home quicker.
Yeah.
I don't want to jinx it now, but it sounds like there was like one outlier.
Yeah.
Wow. So,
Well, look,
anyway, what else is you?
Yeah. Well, look, before we get into the market move stuff, we're talking about collaborations today. So why don't you share with everyone why we were so excited for this to be the topic today?
For me, the most exciting part about collaborations is that they're calculated business tests. I want to put them in the context of intellectual property. And for brands, their intellectual property is their logos, their stories, their brand codes, their aesthetics. So the way to give all those elements legs and scale is to enrich them by sort of recombining them with other brands. It's almost like evolution. It's actually literally an evolution because you put your brand codes, you recombine them with another brand's brand codes. And that gives you, especially in brands in mature markets, where everything is commodified, where your customers are bored. I mean, how many Uniqlo t-shirts can you have? How many Gap t-shirts can you have? How many, let's go to CPG, Dunkin' Donuts, coffee cups can you have? Is a must. Kind of having collaborations because it creates that scarcity, that uniqueness. And that's the way to achieve scale at aggregation of niches as scale. You can achieve scale where no two people have the same thing, not literally, but you create artificial scarcity through collaboration. So everyone wears or drinks the same brand, but no two people have the same thing. So what excites you about collaborations?
So the thing that I've always thought was really interesting was this idea of like there are financial markets, there are consumer markets, but there's also cultural markets. And so all three of those markets sit next to each other, like they're adjacent to each other and influence each other, but they're distinct things with distinct dynamics. I mean, obviously financial markets are their own thing, and that's the stock market, and there's certain things that you do there to increase the value of a stock that isn't necessarily creating consumer value, but it creates enterprise value. At the same time, there are things done in the consumer markets in terms of differentiating a product, creating features and so on, that makes a product more competitive in the consumer markets, but not necessarily the financial markets. But then the cultural markets, I think this is like the least understood because it's ambiguous and it's not tracked in any way. And I think that's the sort of crux of our conversations and what we're excited about. But the cultural markets are where symbolic value is developed, where cultural value is developed and things take on higher order meaning. Now, luxury brands are the ones who've really understood cultural markets, and we talk a lot about that. But the thing that I love about collaborations is it's a way of moving something that's in the consumer market, a competitive product that's differentiated, that's built differently, craft is different, features are different, and then moving it into the cultural market and allowing that product to compete better there because of the symbolic and cultural value that's built on top of it. And so I think a lot of people look at collaborations as just marketing stunts and marketing tactics, but it's actually, and this is what we'll be talking about, it's actually a way of making consumer products extremely valuable in the cultural markets. And so that's what I was excited to kind of dig into and unpack for everyone listening today.
Amazing. So let's dive into it. But first, market moves.
Okay, so as everyone knows, market moves are where we take a look at what's been happening over the last couple of weeks in the cultural markets and what the actions are happening and what are the financial benefits of that. So first up, NVIDIA. NVIDIA crossed $5 trillion in market cap this week, now exceeding the combined value of AMD, ARM Holdings, ASML, Broadcom, Intel, Lam Research, Micron, Qualcomm, and Taiwan Semiconductor. NVIDIA's valuation is bigger than the entire S&P sectors, including utilities and consumer staples. But this isn't fundamentals driven. It's psychological. We're watching the social construction of value, pure crowd dynamics around AI narrative. Market history shows the biggest moves are rarely economic. They're behavioral. The beauty sector is showing resilience, as Estee Lauder reported a 3% organic growth to $3.46 billion quarterly, swinging to $47 million profit from $156 million loss year over year. Puig is up 6.1% to $1.3 billion. Now, this is a classic counter-cycle behavior, as the lipstick effect is playing out as consumers trade down to affordable luxuries and a tightening economy. As you probably heard, Starbucks launched a $29 barista cup, a glass tumbler shaped like a teddy bear in a green beanie, with deliberate scarcity. That sparked nationwide frenzy. Secondary market pricing hit $1,000, which constitutes a 30x markup. Direct revenue impact was minimal, but the strategy generated billions in earned media impressions and drove critical holiday traffic. This quarter, Adidas reported a record Q3 revenues of $6.6 billion in October, upgrading its 2025 outlook after pivoting from a celebrity hype-driven strategy post-Yeezy to a performance culture focus. The company focused on running and football credibility with products like the Adios Pro Evo 2 and Adios Pro 4 winning major marathons. Performance revenues surged 17% currency neutral, outpacing lifestyle, proving technical excellence and athletic victories now drive high margin growth in the saturated footwear market, successfully replacing limited edition drops while rebuilding brand reputation. The strategy has demonstrably worked to raise the company's revenue ceiling and repair the brand's cultural reputation. Liberty Media's Q3 earnings included consolidated MotoGP results following its July acquisition, reporting $169 million in quarterly revenue from the property. This is a classic multiple expansion play, applying the proven F1 transformation model to elevate visibility, attract premium global sponsors, and scale the high-margin subscription business. The strategy positions MotoGP for significant valuation uplift within the Liberty Live Group portfolio. Meanwhile, LVMH and Kering are exiting accessible luxury positions. LVMH is exploring divesting its 50% Fenty Beauty stake, while Kering completed its beauty division sale to L'Oreal. This is a pure margin defense strategy. which means shedding lower margin ventures ahead of an anticipated downturn to concentrate on core categories. Fashion and leather goods delivers a 37% EBIT margins at LVMH. And finally, the LA Times reported that horror films now represent 20% of this year's top 20 global grossers. Warner Brothers Discovery capitalized on this trend during earnings announcements, announcing Gremlins 3 for November 2027 release. This solidifies the franchise as a key tentpole alongside its successful animated series. The genre is also dominating award season. Michael B. Jordan is generating Best Actor buzz for Sinners, while Amy Madigan is a Best Supporting Actress frontrunner for Weapons. Horror is delivering what most people thought it couldn't, both commercial returns and prestige. So Anna, what's the last horror film you saw?
Ooh, that's a great question. You know why? Because I get really scared. I mean, even in this age, I don't know. I love horror movies, but also don't. What about you?
I do not like horror movies.
Really?
Like, I don't know. There's like the whole Saw series. Like, I don't want to watch that.
Oh, yeah, but I saw Sinners, loved Sinners. But it's not really it's not really scary. So,
I think like Sinners and Get Out and things like that, or even the first True Detective, I think those are like existential thrillers, existential horror films. Like those I can get behind because it's more like psychological and atmospheric, but like the blood and gore ones, like so not my thing. And I know like in many ways, like you kind of say like the blood and gore things are like actually comedies. I've heard people interpret them that way, but it's like none of that is relaxing to me. None of that is interesting. Like I actually prefer like if
various feeling like of release when you see like like they say sociologically watch horror movies because you relive the fears through the characters, so that's a release for you. Everything you're afraid of, it's projected, so you don't need to repress those feelings because you see them projected on a screen, so you can relive through the fears of the characters. So you would rather repress that, like keep that.
I mean, I'm sure there's like some Schadenfreude stuff built into that where you see people get what they deserve within the horror film, and that's sort of like an emotional release in some way. But
well, you see, like every age. Michel Foucault said every age gets the madness it deserves. So, we get villains that we, like AI. You know how, like, Mission Impossible 37, or I think it's 8, the AI, like, Ethan is battling AI.
Yeah.
So, it kind of, like, the horror movies now are like, weapons. I do want to see weapons. So, I'm going to now, this is a major spoiler. There is a witch. So you know how like Wall Street Journal...
You just ruined it for everyone who was going to watch it because of the Oscar buzz.
Well, you know what? They can
Good thing this podcast is on the long tail, and so you didn't ruin that many.
Well, I didn't say who it was, except that she's nominated for the Oscar. No, she's not. Anyway, the point is there is always something in the zeitgeist that horror movies capture and build a narrative around, so we can... There is sort of a collective release of fears through horror movies. I did like a lot, speaking of witches, the movie, Dave Eggers' movie Witch, which was set up in like 16th century in New England Protestant community. So if the story is good, you can really enjoy, but it doesn't mean it like a horror movie. I think the genre has become much more diversified than before.
Yeah.
I did see Frankenstein. I don't recommend it. I
thought it was going to be good.
No, I did too, because I loved Guillermo del Toro. I love Devil's Backbone and Pan's Labyrinth, but that's like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
His Spanish movies, especially Devil's Backbone, that's a real horror movie without trying to be horror movie. And this one, I don't know, it's kind of like, like a schoolboy writing, like, can you do like, if Frankenstein had a heart, what would he think? It's not very mature.
Yeah, I mean, his stuff is always so beautiful.
Jacob Elrod is very handsome as Frankenstein. And in real life.
So maybe that's the only reason to say it. Just mute everything and just watch. And I don't know, listen to our podcast while you watch it, and then you'll have like visuals for it. Maybe that's the direction. Anyway, so let's use that as a transition into talking about collaborations.
Fashion collaborations. That's a great segue. Thank you very much. So...
Okay, so let's talk about the topic today and get into collaborations in fashion. In 2024, H&M marked 20 years of designer collaborations. But long before that, Elsa Schiaparelli was remixing fashion with surrealism, featuring artists like Salvador Dali on her gowns. Supreme picked it up in the 90s, and Marc Jacobs amplified it at Louis Vuitton in the early 2000s. More than a Renaissance skill set, collaborations are a business necessity. New Balance dropped a Rosalia collection, Grace Wells Bonner brought Adidas back into cultural relevance, and McDonald's teamed up with Travis Scott and Palace. Erewhon co-branded with Balenciaga. In a world of commodified products, collaborations create cultural scarcity. It turns economic value into symbolic value and makes people reconsider brands they've long ignored. So Ada, sounds like collaborations have to be a core part of any fashion brand.
It does. And I love that you kicked it off with that, because that also leads to collaborations fatigue, in a sense that a lot of people are like, oh no, not another collaboration. And I do agree with that sentiment, but that's only if you think about collaboration as a tactic. If you think about collaboration strategically as a part of a brand's operating system, and I don't want to use that colloquially as a marketing lingo, but literally saying, hey, if you have this intellectual property that the brand has, and you have part of your brand strategy is to create content, it's to kind of see what do you have any mascots, do you have any brand codes? In that sense, collaboration is part of that core tool set, skill set that you as a chief brand officer, chief marketing officer has. That's your one of your most valuable assets. And you do need to use that, because that is literally a blueprint for your brand's survival. At the beginning of this episode, we talked about that being your gene pool for your evolutionary survival. So if you cannot contribute to culture with your gene pool, you're going to end as like Trinocephalus or whatever that doesn't exist, like one of those extinct dinosaurs. So that is exactly, collaborations are a way for brands to contribute to cultural conversation. So let's say you're Dunkin' Donuts, let's say you're Uniqlo, what we mentioned before, or Gap. So the more out of left field that you can do, like you have how were Neanderthals created?
This is not where I thought the conversation was going to go, but keep going, keep going.
Listen. Okay, let's forget about Neanderthals.
A little paleontology with your collaboration methodology.
There is rhyme. Again, Michel Foucault. Every age gets madness it deserves. So when fish jumped from sea to the and developed, like only the ones who developed legs.
Whatever viewers we had, we just lost.
I think we just lost them.
We just lost. Thanks, Anna. We just slipped further down the long tail. So to the one viewer who's still listening to us.
Hey, you know what? I'll just tell you this. And this is, again.
Send your feedback to Anna, not me.
It's, yes.
No, keep going. I'm listening.
Well, it's God honest truth. And honestly, Lee, you're going to be sorry, because I do. All right.
Are the heavens going to open up and the light of knowledge is going to descend upon me from Anna with the fish metaphor? Yeah. Go ahead.
It is. When you look at Erewhon and Balenciaga collaboration, Erewhon is a luxury food market store. I was there 2 weekends ago. It was Saturday morning, and I did buy one of their smoothies. It was excellent. It was $19. And you didn't pay $19 for a smoothie. You pay $19 to see Bad Bunny, Orlando Bloom, Leah Kabede, and as we talked in the last episode, a number of extremely cool people in the 45 minutes that you're there. So that's number one. That's what they sell. Balenciaga under Demna sells similar thing, sells clothes to those people. So Erewhon is in LA, and Erewhon makes sense only in LA because it's intersection of wellness, of fashion, of that laid back, health obsessed lifestyle. Balenciaga said, if we are going to go to LA, that's who we need to partner with. So it means our gene pool, our fish gene pool, needs to combine with the local gene pool in order to create something new that the locals are going to recognize as their own. Otherwise, if you come, like stranger comes to town, do you know what happens in narratives when stranger comes to town? Stranger never gets out of the town.
Oh, is that what happens? I've never thought about that.
Well,
The stranger doesn't leave the town?
What is, you know how there in stories there is either hero goes on a journey, hero's journey, or stranger comes to town. Hero comes back from a journey, but stranger never leaves the town.
So, okay, so we'll save narrative archetypes for another conversation because I actually really love that. In fact, we could connect it to the horror of the movie film of Get Out.
Balenciaga did an extremely smart thing coming to LA, but by collaborating with someone who is local. So when you think about collaborations strategically in terms of your own intellectual property, you always think, what do I want to achieve in terms of what is the next evolutionary step for my brand that I'm doing this? It's never just like, oh, who are we going to collaborate? Either you amplify your brand, you complement your brand, or diversify your brand.
Got it. So then a bad collaboration would be something that doesn't fall into one of those three buckets.
I don't think there is such a thing as a bad collaboration. I just think there is a collaboration that didn't meet their brand and business objectives. You know what I mean? Like, you never know in advance if like, you can say, oh, the collaboration, like, I wouldn't recommend collaboration between, say, a Gap and Doen. Both are California brands. Is Doen audience going to buy Gap? Probably not, because they're like rich California mommies. What is in there for them? But maybe. But then you have Gap and Sandy Liang. Oh, that's a little bit better. Anna Sui, like, they're bringing Anna Sui back to life. There is, a little bit of edginess to that. So that audience may be a little bit more mass. Like, you need to kind of think, like, who is it for and how is it going to be marketed at the end of the day,
Yeah. So really, it's less about who you collaborate with in the collaboration, and it's more about, like, what is the cultural product, and then what niche are you making it relevant to? Because in a way, I guess what you're saying is you could make any collaboration relevant as long as you are focusing it on the right niche.
Absolutely. It's about the marketing, because 5 years ago, I said, oh, good collaborations are art, great collaborations are kitsch. Back then, culture was all about irony and taking things with the wink and not taking things seriously. So having kitsch is something that is purposefully not the real thing. So when you take collaborations that are out there, like I remember using Heron Preston and I think Colgate toothpaste. Like the wilder, the more out there collaboration was, the better it was, because the more unexpected it was, the more it poked fun at the reality. You're not supposed to take it seriously. But since then, collaborations evolved at on the most basic level, reaching a different audience and exposing your brand to the audience that would not normally consider your brand. Mm-hmm. So you say, but I don't think that's even that. You're not going to get that audience. Like, even if they, for a minute, Sandy Liang and Gap, they're going to buy that. They're not going to necessarily consider. Look at Yeezy and Gap. They had a completely separate side. There was zero overlap. Like, no matter where it went, how it ended, and all of that, you have people buy that and they never come back. The same with H&M. You go and you buy the latest drop and you just don't buy any of the main things. Mm-hmm. But at least you bought that. So for a minute, you went to that site.
Well, I think just in that example that you gave of, like, people buy the collaboration. If you plan it wrong, people just buy the collaboration and then don't transfer to the core.
But I think that's line. Like Glenn Martens and H&M. That's what's going on now, or that just happened.
Yeah.
They're going to buy that because they love Glenn Martens, not because they love H&M or Zara collaborations. You know, you're not going to, like, the latest one, 50 years of Zara, or the one that like with Sidney Kraft or Steven Meisel. You're going to buy that because it's a little bit better quality and it's a little bit better design. You're going to buy that. You're not a Zara shopper necessarily. But there may be those who are, and you're going to upsell them on that.
Well, and maybe, in those, it's not trying to bring in new shoppers, though it happens with the collaboration. They'll purchase the specific collaboration. Maybe it's a way of like lifting the perception of Zara in the eyes of people who already shop at Zara, for example.
Oh, I think that's what I mean. I think those are seeing, that's giving them halo. Those are seeing, oh, look what those guys are doing. They're having those more expensive, so I'm going to stretch a bit more and I'm going to treat myself, or like, look what Zara is doing. It's making my $5 t-shirt more valuable or making it worth more. It's not for us for just buying for just paying attention. I totally agree. At the same time, it's keeping Zara in cultural zeitgeist or H&M or something, because you get news and people are seeing news. And for whatever reason, they're like, oh, Zara is doing cool things, And you can't explain why you think that Zara is cool. And that's immediately gives cultural currency. And you don't know when are you going to need those chips.
Yeah, exactly. It enhances and builds the fashion credibility of Zara for people who are at that price point and shop at Zara, so they continue shopping at Zara. So you got to do these kind of like stretch, surprising collaborations as a way beyond just marketing to kind of build those associations for your core base.
I'm glad you brought up marketing, because for me, it's like if traditional advertising on TV, print, or blah, blah, doesn't work and hasn't worked for so many years, decades, you need to do those things. Because at the same time, how are you going to stay in zeitgeist? How are you going to be present if you can't advertise on TV? Because again, brands that advertise like Old Navy, you see those TV spots and so on. You advertise to that audience who is buying. Zara is doing the same thing. You advertise to the audience who is buying you with Sidney Kraft or so on. Why? And you ask a question, so why are they spending so much money on Kaya Gerber or Steven Meisel, and that audience may not even know? Well, it's the same purpose that advertising once used to be like amazing, telling amazing stories for you to buy Coke or Pepsi or so on.
Well, so to go back to that kind of triad triptych framework that I kind of laid out at the beginning, consumer markets, financial markets, and cultural markets, I often think that a lot of the paid advertising is drifting towards really being a focus on consumer markets, making people aware, talking about product features, creating salience. So when people are in the market, they think of it. But that's not really building pricing power. It's not really building preference. It's not really building share of mind in many ways, or share of cultural conversation. That's what you have to do in the cultural markets. And so by doing collaborations, it takes your product, or at least takes your brand, and makes it relevant to the cultural markets, so that you build that symbolic value. So you build that, what would loosely be called brand heat around your company, and being part of the cultural conversation in some way. And so anyway, the collaborations feels much more focused on that than in a completely separate, almost product and marketing strategy than like traditional paid media, which is more consumer markets.
Absolutely. And I think this is a great way to slide into collaborations in sports, because in many ways, sports at this time is where the cultural action is, them being one of the very few cultural events that gathers still that mass audience that we used to have across different cultural verticals like entertainment and fashion and film and so on. And so why don't we go into that? So this past week, following the Los Angeles Dodgers World Series victory, Major League Baseball and the merchandiser partner Fanatics co-created limited edition championship collection with Japanese contemporary artist Takashi Murakami. The cultural product was a line of high-end streetwear, hoodies, t-shirts, and accessories that fused the Dodgers' traditional championship insignia and colors with Murakami's iconic multicolored smiling flowers and Japanese katakana characters. The product was scarce and exclusive, leading to immediate sellouts and massive queues at pop-up locations.
I personally really love this because, like, I mean, I grew up playing baseball, like, as a kid and stuff and into my teens. And, like, just the thought of the art world and the fashion world and baseball merging together was such a strange concept. Because, like, baseball is, like, in many ways, a Victorian sport. It's a sport where you're not supposed to show emotion. It's a slow moving sport. It's a very traditional sport within American culture. And the fact that it's doing something like this, to me, is really progressive. But, like, part of the reason why I think the sports world is so interesting to look at from a collaboration standpoint, and I think Europe does a really good job with this, with all the football kits over there and stuff. But you have a business model that is increasingly recognizing that it's an IP business as opposed to an entertainment business.
I want to push back. I think IP and entertainment are the same thing, but go on.
Yeah, right. But this, okay, so that's a good point. But the difference I'm teasing out a little bit is where you start with the self-identity. If you start it in the entertainment space, you do what sports teams have thought about for a long time, which is people come to play the game. Or people come to see the game being played. And so I have a team, they need to be competitive and all this stuff. And that is true. And that's a core part of it. But if you're just seeing yourself as an entertainment business, then that's where you focus. If you see yourself as an IP business, which I think is one step up, which can include on the field game activities, but it can also include, you know, the merchandise. It can also include the historic archival video. It can include food collaborations and so on. So for instance, like the Dodgers, they're bringing the Dodger point of view into all of these different collaborations. And so there's a whole reason why they picked Tekashi, because of the fashion nature of LA, because of the art scene in LA and stuff like that. And so it felt really natural. So for instance, like if the Milwaukee Brewers did a collaboration with Tekashi, that would feel odd for that city, that culture, that team identity to do that kind of collaboration. But it feels much more natural in LA doing it. And I think it's so interesting that these sports franchises are recognizing much more than they used to in the past, the community influence, the cultural influence, and they're trying to play more of that game than they are just ticket sales, which used to be the whole narrative, right? So you see ticket sales as the consumer market product, but when you see yourself as an IP business, then you can get into like the cultural product, as you often talk about, business and producing that type of stuff, like these collaborations with Tekashi. And people love it because there's so much identity wrapped up in a sports team emblem and what it represents in a city. I mean, think about the Oakland Raiders in the 80s, or
I don't think about
Yankees.
Oakland.
Yeah, I know. But or you think about the New York Yankees hat. The New York Yankees hat is become a fashion statement.
Oh yeah, I know. Especially the green one. Explain why.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you want me to explain why?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, why
right.
the green one? You know what I mean? They come in all colors, but the green one is all of a sudden like, at least it's not now, but I think in early 2024, I was like, why is everyone like wearing green?
Yeah, well, I think that's partly a fashion cycle, but ALD was really the one who popularized the green New York Yankees hat, and obviously the guy who started that is from New York. So I think that's really where it came from, is just part of that whole kind of streetwear preppy aesthetic that he was able to put together so elegantly and perfectly for that. And so that's why that particular hat became really symbolic. But it was really just building on these sort of luxury city queue of
and
New York
here
Yankees
I thought it was crowd
globally.
mentality and trend cycles.
Well, I do think it's that, but somebody has to seed it, right?
Oh, yes. And then if you start going there, I do think that, but you never know. It has to be, the mood needs to be right for that. And I do think the mood was, and I think the mood was right, and I'm glad we are talking about the mood was right for sports to start being that fertile territory for inspiration.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons, because you know how sometimes you take inspiration from film or from country life or from outdoors for like gorpcore, like there were different sources, and it was time for baseball, for basketball, for soccer to become that field of it, because prep before it was racing, yachting, rowing was the field. And now it came much more closer to those mass spectator sports.
Well, and like baseball as a league, as a sport, has really been struggling to find its place culturally. Like basketball found it, football found it. Baseball hasn't really found, even F1 found it, like much more recently as a phenomenon, but baseball's really struggled to figure out what it is. And I don't think the Tekashi thing has defined what that is. I think that was really good for the Dodgers.
Because it's really hard to watch, Lee.
It is. I loved playing baseball, but watching it was very boring, which is why they've been going through all these like rule changes within the sport and stuff. But anyway, it's part of a bigger problem is that they're not competitive in the consumer market in terms of viewers and stuff, but they're also not competitive in the cultural markets either. They're being totally trounced by F1, by NBA, by the NFL, and then there's basketball or baseball trying to figure out what is the cultural conversation and the cultural context that it is part of, that is really driving its role in culture. But I think sports is such a rich place to go play culturally, but to the exact point that you were talking about earlier, it's one of the last places that's really commanding television viewership. That's why all these giant contracts are being written, whether it's from Amazon or HBO or the networks, the traditional networks are trying to hold on to these because they're still, this is the thing that still attracts people's attention, that the live sports, live entertainment television. So sports has this really outsized role in the economy because of the attention it can still command despite, content moving towards algorithmic content. And at the same time, it's also an industry that has enormous cultural value to it that isn't being harvested by the vast majority of these sports franchises, particularly within baseball, because it's a different mentality to kind of harvest and participate in those cultural conversations.
I like what you said, and also I think that Formula One gives a great blueprint for that, because they've moved recently, especially in the US. Formula One has been strong in Europe for a really long time, for at least 70 years, since 1960s or something. So that's 60 years. But here, when they came in, it's like, now it's Miami, Las Vegas, Austin. So what they have? They don't have only a race. They have partnership with Louis Vuitton for trucks, for trophy cases, for champagne when it's celebrated, for clothes, for riders. They have Drive to Survive series, which attracted 41% of Gen Z women. They have celebrity. Rihanna comes to watch the races. They are saying we want to be 365 around the year relationship with our spectators. They have Gordon Ramsay restaurant there. They have VIP experiences around. So for them, it's pure IP. It's like race, great. But everything else that's happening around race, it's one package. And I think that's a great template for what the sports entertainment complex is, because you see that a little bit with the NBA when you have the players as stars, the front, the first row, when you have like the tunnel walk, what are they wearing and so on. But I think there is so much more that can be done in that sense, especially in terms of content that is surrounding that entire experience.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I think, look, talk to any rabid fan of a specific team, whether it's the Yankees, the Mets, the Dodgers, the Atlanta Braves, whoever it is. And a lot of these people live these teams. They live the current team. They live the past teams. They live the heritage. They live the stories. They live the values that are exhibited by these teams. A lot of times these sports teams are default lifestyle brands. And they didn't even really build themselves that way, but because of our societal relationship with sports, where it is a microcosm of everything we wish to be, everything that we experience on a day-to-day level, the competition, the camaraderie, the aspiration, the climbing, the
The
underdog
community
stories.
in the end of the day, it's like that us versus them, again, vicariously experienced.
Exactly. In-group, out-group, social dynamics and stuff. These things have become on their own lifestyle brands. And so I think, to your exact point, what's really exciting is seeing some of these teams recognize that and start to structure it more intentionally rather than just letting it happen organically. And I think to the point that we've always talked about on this podcast, it's not about marketing to these communities. It's about contributing to it and creating a little more structure around these communities, around these cultures that have emerged, and taking care of those communities and being really in touch with them and seeing what the sports organization can do for those communities to better support the thriving of those communities. Because as you probably know, most of these communities feel that the team is theirs. Not the ownership company
look
that
at
owns
that.
the
That's
company.
like, it's totally medieval because you wear insignia, you wear those crests, you wear the colors of the team, history and heritage and stories and myths and heroes. Everything is there. And like bringing it back to collaborations, like Formula One collaborations, they have Lego, they have Paxson, they go in so many ways, like Lego toys, you put together a Formula One car, you go to fashion, you go to furniture. They haven't gone to furniture, but that's a great way for us to move in the third and final part of this podcast.
Yeah, so let's talk about collaborations in furniture. 10 years ago, IKEA stopped being just a furniture company. It rebranded itself as a source for affordable, well-designed everything, and it meant it. That shift unlocked cross-category growth into electronics, wellness, sports gear, even fashion. Its first apparel collection dropped this year. And what makes it all work? A deeply consistent design philosophy, a values-driven culture, and aesthetics strong enough to stretch across categories. In a world where brand stretch often dilutes value, IKEA keeps multiplying it. So Anna, the question is, how?
Because they're damn sweet.
I mean, Swedish aesthetic is specific and desirable, so that might be true.
The question is how, because they literally redefine themselves, well-designed, everything, smart enough to, first of all, I love IKEA case study, which I discovered, I think, some 5 years ago, in a sense of value innovation concept. And value innovation is when you find a critical part of a value chain where you can, if you change that part, you're going to reinvent the entire way the value is created in that category. So that's Ryanair for you, or EasyJet. So they figured out if we unbundle everything that goes in the price of a ticket, and you say you pay for your seat, you pay for your luggage, you pay if you want a premium boarding, blah, blah. If you kind of like pay for all those elements that were bundled together, you get EasyJet and you ruin the planet and Barcelona, Rome, Dubrovnik, and the rest, But you create a new category of affordable travel for millions that were not able to. So IKEA did the same thing. The founder of IKEA, and don't please ask me to pronounce his first and last name, is figured out the most expensive part of furniture is shipping already assembled pieces, because it's Jenga. You can't put that thing together in a way that is going to be cost effective on those freight ships. So he figured out if we disassemble that and we put the cost of assembly to customer, we can actually reduce cost of furniture. So all of a sudden in the 50s, everyone could have those modernist pieces and assemble them at home. So yes, you have to do the labor yourself of assembly, but you could have those amazing pieces. And some IKEA pieces from that period are unbelievable. Like go to eBay and see they're insanely better. And they say,
well, they even a few years, but quickly on that, to your point, they did an archival release several years ago where they brought back pieces from that period and they sold out immediately. Like they were actually really nice mid-century modernist pieces.
Love that. And they say that 1 in 10 Europeans is conceived in IKEA bed. I don't know if that's alarming or not, but everyone has this Billy bookshelf or like that kind of cultural influence it's just beyond. And we don't even think about it. We think of cultural influence in terms of like horror movies or books or sports. We don't think about like, oh, IKEA. Like we look down on IKEA, but for some people it's aspirational. And I think that's really good to think about strategy is, oh, IKEA is luxury or IKEA is mass or IKEA is aspirational. You can like corner the entire market by diversifying strategy like that. And I think that IKEA collaborations do precisely that because they have on a mass level, they're collaborating with Byredo, for example, Scent, or they collaborated with Virgil Abloh while he was still alive, Off-White. So they kind of created that pop culture halo. They went into apparel. They went into gaming. So they're everywhere where pop culture is, which is that, again, like a lot of people buy a lot of things from IKEA. A lot of people don't buy things from IKEA, but a lot of people consider IKEA as innovator because of those collaborations.
By the way, what they do in gaming?
Oh, chairs.
Oh, gaming chairs. Okay, yeah,
they
yeah.
do chairs for gamers, lights, tables, like everything around the actual gaming consoles, which is really smart. You create the pods for gamers. They do lighting as well. They do sustainable homes even in Africa. Like they're everywhere, literally, because everything is opportunity if you define yourself as good design.
Weren't they doing like an entire city block or city sector somewhere in Europe? I remember that vaguely.
I don't know, but you know what the recent campaign is? They literally are branding emotions. So they have like a giant billboard with like a face with a tear. And they put a price on a tear because that's moving. And you're moving IKEA furniture, but because moving is also very, like it's always emotional. They don't even need to put their furniture anymore. Now they're associated with emotions. That's like a luxury brand flex. That's like what Brunello is doing.
Yeah, no, I mean, once you reach a level of saliency and awareness and, you know, being part of the collective imagination or collective understanding, you can flex like that and not have to market the product as much. I think the thing about a lot of the IKEA collaborations strategically is that it helps them flex the style, the design aspect of it, because they have, you know, a lot of quality issues or quality. They're not seen as like super high quality furniture that you're going to keep for a long time. And so that's probably a core part of their business, given that it's all flat pack type of stuff. And so that's a harder thing for them to overcome. But what they can do is they can
but that's opportunity because, you know, like you keep going back to upgrade because I think they tapped into that furniture as fashion when you kind of redo your home every few years.
And I'm literally going through this with my wife right now, where she wants to redo everything in the house and stuff. But to your exact point, by leaning into style and a design aesthetic and being able to be fresh and be part of those design cycles, of course, there probably needs to be like a sustainability aspect behind it as well, since you're churning through lots of different furniture and stuff. But I think that creates a higher order, more emotional value beyond cheaper flat pack do-it-yourself kind of furniture, which was the core entry into the marketplace. But you got to build like a ceiling-less value proposition that can constantly refresh itself. And so those collaborations are a core way of building that equity and building that anticipation of what is stylish, what is great design, and design relevance that IKEA is bringing to the furniture space.
Yes, and I think that also the way IKEA's advertising has become equally known as their furniture. So as a form of communication, I just said like those recent ads, the branding emotion, also that ad like, are you up? You up? Which is the way, you know, like how, anyway, I'm not going to explain, you know. Everyone knows. So, and also like just the style of communication is so modern, so in sync with culture that you almost think that the furniture is sinking culture, and that furniture probably hasn't changed in decades. But you always think, oh, but IKEA is something you have, like young people have, which is, you do want to have that perception, because if you're not expensive, which they're not, if you're not high quality, at least you want to corner that market. You want to capture that market, that you're a first home out of college or during college or something like that. And then it's the same way you want to create a lock-in with the audience. You hope they're going to keep coming back throughout their life for different things.
I mean, like, to kind of play on the collaboration thing with IKEA, for example, is, there's a thriving community, a DIY community of people who are modifying IKEA furniture, like the Billy cabinets and stuff, and doing really interesting things with it. And you can find it all over Instagram, and it was also predate social media. But like, those are the types of great people to do collaborations with, because it goes back to the core DNA of IKEA, which is the DIY stuff, but it's also people bringing their own point of view on style and design to it and stuff. And so I always thought like that was a really great opportunity. I don't know how much IKEA has acted on it or what they think about it and stuff, but that always seemed like a really good opportunity for IKEA to lean into in terms of collaboration and maybe elevate some people from that community. Even if IKEA were to take some ideas from that community, do a partnership with people and say, hey, let's actually produce this as an official IKEA product. Lego's done that with creators. Like, we have a Lego in our house, like a cat that someone made, and then that person was invited to come into Lego and work with the actual Lego designers to tweak it a little bit so it could be turned into a product, but it was still that fan's Lego cat that they invented. And so Lego sells it, and I'm sure they give some royalties or whatever to the person who invented it. I just think there's a really interesting opportunity for IKEA to collaborate that way. And so lots of times we talk about collaborations as like, who's the artist or who's the celebrity or who's the other brand that you can collaborate with. But when your community who is passionate, your fans are passionate about your product, they can be great collaborators too. You can just pull them up, and it's a great story to tell and a great way to, in a way, give back to the community of fans that surround the business.
And I think that's a great way to kind of wrap this conversation up, because that's next for collaborations. That's a question from the beginning, which is collaborating with communities. It's like brand collaborating with each other, number one, and then brands collaborating with celebrities, creators, which we see like New Balance, Rosalia, a brand collaborating with categories which are out there, Erwan, Balenciaga, and then brands collaborating with their fandoms, which we're going to see more and more, because as intellectual property spreads out, that's another way for it, because even intellectual property needs evolutionary model. So what's next, Lee?
Oh, I love how you slipped the evolutionary model back in.
My fish with legs.
Fish with legs. That's the official symbol of collaboration, of fish with legs. Okay, so Anna, let's wrap up. What's the through line today that's worth keeping in mind?
Aside of fish with legs.
Yeah, fish with legs. Got to put a
visual
visual in people's heads.
You may laugh, but fish with legs is collaborations as business strategy, which I always think about in my work. It's not marketing. Don't think about collaborations as marketing. Think about it as business strategy, which is how are you going to monetize your intellectual property? What is the business model that you're going to stretch? What intellectual property you have? How are you going to monetize it? How are you going to capitalize on it? And then how are you going to measure success? Where is it going to take you? How is it going to make you grow? How is it going to help you grow your market share? Either in terms of audience, either in terms of your market cap, where is it going to take you? Knowing that is not advertisement. That is literally how you're going to grow your business.
Yeah, I think for me, the really interesting thing in all of this is really thinking of collaborations as a product line, right? A product line that is for sale within the cultural markets. And if you create it the right way, if you target the right people with it, and you support it in the right way, you can sell it, you can get tons of cultural conversation around it. So it almost acts like marketing in of itself. And in many ways, it can, it can really energize an organization internally. Like there's nothing more exciting than like launching new stuff and seeing it happen. But when you're doing it, building off your core business, as opposed to creating a completely different thing that you have to append to your core business, it makes a lot more sense, and it's able, from a business leadership standpoint, able to help you create more value with what you're already doing. And I think that's a key thing in a low growth economy where there's hyper competition everywhere.
Amazing. So next time we're going to talk about brands that are tastemakers and brands that are trend makers. So we have Disney, we have Prada. They're setting trends for a really long time. Their influence is long-term. Other brands, like maybe A24 or Mattel, they capitalize really well on a short-term cultural waves. What is the difference? Tune in next episode of Hitmakers Season 2 to find out. Thank you, Lee.
Thanks, Anna.